Hugh is a counselor, therapist, entrepreneur, and a podcaster. Hugh, welcome to the show, or welcome back, I should say.
Greetings, my brother. Greetings. How you doing? You okay?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thanks. Thanks for your patience. We overran a bit with the previous interviews. So let's get straight into it, Hugh. I mean, last week we touched on interracial relationships, and we spoke about the disproportionate amount of Black men with other partners who are not Black, with white women in particular. 50% of Black men of Caribbean heritage are with white women. So if you enter a room and say there are 10 Black men in there, what that statistics is telling you is that perhaps half of them are with white women. And interestingly, Hugh, during the week I was speaking to someone who was telling me that they know of a family where there are about 9 brothers in the family.
Yeah.
And 8 of the 9 are with white women. 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've gone past the 50. They've gone past the 50% there. They've gone past.
Absolutely, they are absolutely bulldozed that. So it's an interesting situation, and I think we're discussing it because, of course, no other ethnic group has that high level of interracial relationships. But we discussed that last week. I want to move on a bit from that to other aspects of Black relationships and Black masculinity. Last year? Ethan, sorry, calling me Ethan. I just interviewed Ethan. Hugh.
Yeah.
I think was it last year or a couple of years ago? You had an event where you were kind of like a speed dating event.
That was last year. That was last year.
Right. Right. And just explain the concept. Just remind me of the concept.
Yeah, no, it wasn't so much a speed dating event, but it was a launch of Soul to Soul Connections. I'm no longer involved in Soul to Soul Connections, like from a business point of view, but I'm still friends with Zora, who's leading that up at the moment. But we were business partners at the time, and what it is the idea of a Black bespoke introductory service. So it's the idea of screening men and women and putting them in the same room, men and women who we feel that after the screening process they would match up, and we'd have events, dinners, where people could sit down and actually speak. And to avoid the speed dating, but more like you'd get to speak to 2 people in a night, 2 people in a particular meeting, but to have that level of quality of conversation. And it was to sort of take the speed out of it and actually literally slow it down to say, like, what you're going to learn about a person in 3 minutes might be more, beneficial to speak with them for half an hour, spend a portion of the evening. And yeah, so it's more of an introductory service. They have them in the Jewish community, the Muslim community, and, mainstream white Britain, whatever. So,
Absolutely. So how was it then in terms of the take up, and, did you find single Black men and women who are interested in that offering?
More women. It's quite common that there's more women that are more, daring and stuff like that. I had a lot of male inquiries. I went to an event at Christmas, actually, that was quite well turned out in terms of men and women. But I was like, not a punter, but I was just a celeb. What do you call it again? A complimentary guest. I just pretended just to, observe and stuff like that. Like I said, because I stepped back from the business because of my other business commitments. But I get the concept does work, but I think there's more women. There is more women.
And what's the feedback you've gotten from the participants who've taken part in such events?
No, what happened is there was not just the participants of the events, but people who just generally interested and of a certain age. Say you're over 35s. There was a lot of interest and a lot of seeing the rationale behind it. People that had kind of, had long-term relationships or haven't had long-term relationships, but see the need of, like, sometimes just taking it, rolling rolling the lottery and trying something in a dance, or I don't know, whatever the case may be. But like, we need different methods of meeting people now because society's so changed in so many different ways in terms of people's lifestyle, in terms of how people socialize and stuff like that. That maybe for younger people, it's still, they're at college, they're at university, they're in those spaces, where they're women and young men and women are in close proximity. So it's still easier for them to strike up connections. But as you kind of like evolve and get older, like we kind of not grow apart, but we socialize somewhat with a bit of a chasm between us as Black men and women. So yeah, there was a lot of interest. And I understand that Zora's still, doing stuff, doing a lot of stuff on that front, pushing the business. So definitely,
right. So you had those events. There was a lot of interest, as you say, more Black women than men participants.
mm-hmm.
Let's talk about dating in the modern society. Now we've got the proliferation of apps, Tinder, and all the rest of it. Has it changed? Has it changed how men and women are meeting up, and has it increased the level of informality and the more sort of casual approach to relationships?
Yeah, I think it's affected. They got this thing called a Google effect, right? And they're saying that they believe that because of all the access to information with our fingertips, right, our memory, certain ability, capacity we have to retain information is going to be affected, right, neurologically, because we don't have to remember numbers no more and remember certain details. And I think, like with the advancement of Facebook and various dating apps and things of this nature, yeah, I think it has affected a lot of people's social skills, in terms of the dating game, because people are able to meet or make contact with such a wider variety of people, but they don't have maybe the depth in terms of the nature of the relationship, the interaction. In the past, you go out, you meet somebody in a social setting, you'd have to have a conversation with them to a certain level as a man to convince them to give you your phone number, give them for them to give you their phone number, and then you phone them, and then you make a time to meet and you follow up. There was a whole kind of ritual around it, but that's gone to a large degree because of the online factor and people just swiping left. And there's this idea of this ever abundance of people of the opposite sex are just click, 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 click. So it's affected, isn't it? Quality over quantity of relationship, isn't it? There's a lot of surface going on at the moment. There's a lot of surface where people...
What's your view then? Because when I was growing up, I think that tradition was still there. That boy meets girl, and if you're really serious, then there's going to be a bit of courting, right?
Right.
It's there's going to be a bit of chasing to try and to eventually.
Oh yeah, not like a bit of chase,
Yes. To win girls' hearts.
Yeah.
And of course, because social media was not so prominent in those days, everything was sort of face to face, and you would meet up, you would talk, and the telephone, maybe you'd use the telephone a lot, trying to understand and know each other, and that was sort of seen as quite normal, especially if you were trying to find a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
Is in today's world, is that still happening? Do we still have that sort of period where people give it some thought and time and court? They court each other before they settle down.
Yeah, no, I think people are still courting. I think there are some people who they might use dating apps, for example, but it's just literally just to spark, right? It's just to literally, see if they can meet somebody that they have a spark, they like them, they make a connection, they have a conversation, and it takes kind of like a similar old school process where it's, people meeting, dating, and they're building like a rapport and a connection, and it just evolves out of that, right? So, but then there's some people who maybe they don't have certain, or they haven't developed those certain skills yet, and so it's a lot of shallow, what do you call it, like a lot of time wasters maybe, or people who they can only move to a certain level, first base, second base, and then just wash, spin, and repeat. They're just repeating at a certain superficial level, just over and over with just numerous people. So it's not going nowhere. And there is a lot of fear in the modern world, I think. There's a lot of fear in the modern world. There's a big gender war going on in terms of feminism and how a lot of men see women and how women see men and how we kind of getting programmed, particularly with young people. So there's a lot of fear. People are not necessarily, some people are carrying trauma or issues from past relationships, and so they haven't healed yet, but they're kind of like jumping back into the dating pool, unresolved. It's complicated. It's complex, man. It's complex. Seriously, it's a lot of different dynamics at play, but definitely the old school way is fading, in my opinion. Humble opinion. Yeah, and I think there's science to say that as well. There's science to say that, like, because when dating apps were first coming out and they were so stigmatized, so people still kind of more people went for the old school option. But there's no real stigma. There's nothing wrong with using a dating app. It's fine, really, to start the ball. but still it comes down to the old school skill of boy meets girl or man meets young lady. And, you know, are you chivalrous? Have you got vibes? Can you, you know, create a contact with her and create a connection, and vice versa? Is she engaging and she's not just beautiful, but she got something to say or something about her own personality that draws you in, you know, for it to take its natural course.
So in this world now where we live, where, you know, people want things now, there's a high level of self gratitude. You know, people want to be, they want to meet their expectations immediately.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for young women who still want to be courted, who still want men to you know, to sort of pursue them and over a period of time before they commit and before any intimacy? What's your advice to women? Is that no an unrealistic dream?
No, I would say this is the time for women to for young ladies to double down. That, like, if they are looking for a certain type of connection, they're looking for a certain kind of criteria, that they shouldn't, especially when they're young, they shouldn't lower their standards, or what, you know, they use this term settle or whatever the case is, because a woman's, you know, in her youth and in a more fertile, if we get to evolutionary psychology, the younger and fertile, and, you know, that's her prime time now. So, like, this is when she's got the bargaining chip in her hand, so she don't have to you know.
Hugh, I've got a phone call. Hello, caller. Hi, you're live in here. Go ahead.
I think this is such an important topic, because in essence, when we ask ourselves about whether what type of whether a young man is actually sort of dating black women or dating white women, and what's the reason for this? I think it's such a complex topic that in essence, you want us, you need a whole show. And I'm grateful that you've actually come back to the topic again, because in truth, I think if we gave it consideration, we'll realise that it's not just about whether black men are dating white women, because being a black man in this society, we know the complexity of actually making decisions about who you date and who you don't date, because it's not about just who you fancy or who you like or who you think is a credible partner. There's a lot more variables to it. I mean, colorism is done this way, because I remember talking to a black woman, and I said to her, you know, I think that mothers play a big role in their son making decisions about the type of partner that they actually welcome to the house and eventually have as a wife. Because a lot of mothers, black women, I'm not talking about white women, I'm talking about black women, have a lot of sort of prejudice about the type of woman that their son bring home to them. The other thing as well is that we can start by us also looking at the fact of the white trophy. The fact that, you know, a black man sees himself as successful, and he actually then attaches himself as a white woman because it is the trophy that basically shows his success, or he is looking for somebody who can get him through the door that a black woman won't get him through the door. And I mean, I'm just going to quickly run through things. Or also the fact that he has no background knowledge of himself, his heritage and his culture, and he has no confidence about adopting a role that is a black role, that is defends his community, that defends the generation to come, because a lot of black men will actually choose the easy route of saying, you know what, I don't have to carry the responsibility of making sure that the next generation is black, and that I do produce black children for the reason of perpetuating and continuing my life. So there's a lot of issues which I think that, you know, we can talk about the fact that modern women today, but on what basis do we understand the relationship of black people? Is it a religious reason? Is it a cultural reason? Is it a philosophical reason? What is the reason? And finally, to say this as well, we are still coming out of the shadows of slavery, right? Which actually debased our understanding of relationships between the black man and the black woman, destroyed the black family, right? And we're still recovering from that. And many, if you look around, a lot of black men still behave as if they're dogs, right? Being trailed around by their slave owners to actually sort of impregnate women, right? And take no responsibility for it. And hopefully that is dying out. But the issue is, there's a lot of complex issues actually contribute towards how young black men make decisions about their role and responsibility within the family. Because a lot of black men don't see themselves as having a role within the family. I don't have to see themselves as actually being part of, because there's no such thing as a head of part of a black family. But interesting conversation.
Thank you, Kola. You've made some very interesting points there. So Hugh, I guess it goes back to I guess the broader question, right? Is how do you choose a partner? And in this case, we're talking about black men, right? How do you make that decision? You know, and I guess before the call around, we were sort of having a more general. I
do want to come back to that question, you know, that discussion about black men and choosing, you know, life partners and stuff like that. But you were talking about young women, you know, like, and saying, you know, if things have changed and do they, in other words, like intimacy is a thing on click of the finger on demand. And I'm saying to the young women, no, you don't lower your standards. You don't do that. It's your time, and you can be very selective, and you can be very prudent about who you who you let into your life, and you get to commit to.
On that point, I'm going back to what I said, because we're going to have a very straight talking conversation here.
Yes, sir.
You're saying to black women and women in general, but let's just look at black women for a minute. Don't lower your standards, and so on. But then you too often hear black men say, "Oh well, black women are too difficult. That's why they date outside." You know. So what's the black women can't win, can they? They're damned if they do, damned if they don't.
But you know, there's different types of black people, right? There's some black men that they don't, in a way, because even I know we're kind of evolving away from this kind of like interracial conversation, right? About interracial dating, but the bottom line is there's some black men, they don't really have nothing in their heart for black women, isn't it? Really, so it's cool, you know. It's cool because it's flogging a dead horse, and you can't guilt a man into fancying who he don't fancy. They ain't got nothing for black women. Cool, keep it pushing, no worries, right? But there are brothers that love black women. They love the black queens. You know what I mean? Even if they're angry and aggressive, even if they're attitudinal, with all of whatever comes with it, but they just love black women. Do you know what I mean? So they're gonna find the type that fits them. You know what I mean? So I don't think sisters have to be a certain way because, if I don't become a certain way, I don't operate a certain way, they're gonna go off with white women. You know, that's cool. That's do you.
And do you think too that too often interracial relationships are romanticized? You know, so black men especially tend to create this image that, I'm with a white woman and life is a bit easier, compared to if I was with a black woman. Do you think sometimes it's too often they romanticize it and make it look like what it actually probably isn't? Because all relationships, irrespective of race, are challenging, right?
By nature, by definition, you got two personalities trying to cooperate. There's always going to be challenge, but I mean, it does make sense why some men would think that way. Not saying that I am forward in that line of reasoning, but I understand the logic behind it. Like if a man's thinking to himself, being black in this country is difficult, and it's a struggle, and I could be a victim of institutional racism and stuff like that. Then for some men, it is like with a conscious or unconscious, it's like, well, if I'm with a white woman, then I kind of get a bit of leverage, or she might have a better credit rating, or we could move out to Kent or some kind of area where there's no black people. It's less struggle, it's less, like he's trying to get away from his blackness, so to speak. And part of that assimilation might be having a partner that is similar to the people from this country. So I understand the rationale. I don't, it's everyone's choice, isn't it? I might not think that's honorable, but it's a free country and this is right, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, look, we're not casting any judgment here. But
yeah.
We're just having a conversation of what is actually happening out there, right?
We're speaking descriptively. We're not speaking prescriptively to say, you must do this and you must do that if you don't, you know what I mean? But we're just describing what's going on, really. Yeah, we're just giving a commentary to what's going on. Yes. But I am biased when it comes to the women. Don't lower your standard. I am saying don't lower your standard. That's different. Yeah.
You're downtraining because your mother was black. So you know me, if you go for white, but you're saying that your mother wasn't good enough for you, and you want the black woman that would be good to you. Because I see a lot of black boys that white girls, right? I'm thinking there's a lot of tough tapes. Because somebody that's opposite you, when you care for a black woman. But what's even more disturbing now, I don't know if you're aware of it, but for me, I'm aware of it, particularly when I go around town. The man now jumped out here on a 35 with a white man. That to me is a disturbing trend because again, we're full circle now whereby a generation of black women now don't want anything to do with black men. They're born into the white stereotype that black men are this, black men are that, black men are playing blah blah.
Yeah, but Colin, we started the conversation by saying that half of the black men in this country of Caribbean heritage are not dating black women anyway. So what are black women supposed to do? You can't just say, well, you know, you can't date white men either.
I said that. What I said, I understand that you're saying that percentage, which is true, but I find it disturbing now that because of our, and this is where the conversation to go. To me, there's a big disconnect between the black man and the black woman, right? This is why you have a situation whereby 50% of black men, particularly the so-called Caribbean heritage or white women, and now I look in town, I'm in town even today, Sunday, and the amount of black and white men, that's the disturbing trend. Something is definitely wrong somewhere now. We're both into this white society because this white society is saying that the ideal black family is a black man and a white woman and a white man and a black woman. Just look at television. Right? And that's the perpetrating enough of the people. So we need to have a reason whereby we need to understand that A, they are subliminal engagement with black people because they're there, they want to destroy the black family. This is why they destroy the black man and the white woman and now the white man and the black woman. And like you said or somebody else said, they did that during our enslavement, whereby they took the black man away from his family and black men and black women never had any meaningful relationship within the 400 years of our enslavement. So we need to be very, very careful and mindful that there is, whether people believe it or not, there's a systematic attempt to destroy the black family by any means. And this is why the society is very happy to promote black men and white women and white men and black women. We must be very careful.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Well, I don't know if society is happy to promote it. Yes, there are lots of images that suggest that, you know, when they try to do adverse to the diverse, that's the image you get. So yeah, it's an interesting observation. But I just on a more general note, Hugh, because I want to push the conversation a bit. Just sort of, I want to go more into sort of the relationships, black relationships. Now,
Yeah.
We often talk about black men, and of course, you know, this shouldn't be a stereotype because you know they're universally, you know, even within the white community, men in general will get into relationships. The relationship breaks down and they leave, right?
Yeah.
And you have single parent homes, but you know, it seems, and again, you know, I'm generalizing here, but it seems that we are seeing a situation where, in some cases, we're not staying committed in relationships, you know. So we'll kick off a relationship with all the excitement that comes with that, right?
Yeah. Full steam ahead. Yeah,
exactly. You know, you kick off a relationship with all the excitement that comes with it, and then as time goes on now, and you're like, right, okay, we're gonna commit now and continue. You find that, you know, either the woman or the men in particular pull out and say, no. And do you think that there's a problem there, Hugh, where sometimes people get into a relationship, and even though they might go to counseling to prepare them for marriage, for example, nobody tells them that, oh, by the way, you know, all this euphoria that you're feeling right now because you've just met, it's not going to be, you're not going to always feel like that. The relationship is going to take work.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a certain mindset. I call it staying power. Do you think that sometimes we don't realize that, you know, because some men and women, we jump from one person to the next, searching for that perfect person that just doesn't exist. And rather than, you know, we just don't have that staying power.
No, that's what I was saying to you before when we were talking about the dating apps, yeah. But even when people actually get into relationships, there's some people, men and women, right? Black men and women, what they do is just repeat the same cycle with different people. So they get to a certain stage, like they said, they get to that, they do the euphoric stage, And then after about 18 months, 2 years, when it starts to now, you need, like you said, staying power, and it's like a level of the cortisol levels in the brain and the body has calmed down now. And now the commitments, the bond, you're supposed to be bonded together, right? But they can't because they're searching for the next high. It's like a junk. They're like junkies, isn't it? You know what I mean? Relationships give them that certain euphoria. When it stops giving them that euphoria, they're on to the next.
Hugh, not relationships, the beginnings of a relationship.
Yes. That quintessential excitement that takes place at the start. You know what I mean? But after that, when it starts to wane, they level up that kind of deeper when the real love when it's like that person annoying me, but I still got that feeling for them. You know what I mean? You know, it takes that in a committed marriage. You know what I mean? But no, they can't talk. There's some people, their threshold and tolerance is low, you know. And I wonder if we're being prepared as a culture. Are we being prepared for marriage? Like our young men and young black men and women, are they actually being prepared for marriage? Because as far as I'm concerned, the word marriage has kind of come off the table. People are more happy to have kids out of marriage, but would you marry her? Marry her, big man, marry her. Like they're happy to share their DNA, but like marriage is like, no, that's too far. That's serious business. I'm like, I can't get my head around that one. I don't know what happened to us. Something happened to us in this country.
There's no forum in our community where we purposely get our young people together so that they can actually meet each other, right? With the intention of creating a relationship.
Yes. 100% correct. 100% correct.
We create any event that purposely do that. We actually isolate ourselves, and our children wander off and find their own level. Right? And we, the community, don't actually organize or perpetuate anything at all that basis says, you know what, we're going to look at the next generation and look to see how the next generation can come together. But I would mind your comments on that.
Yes, thank you, Colin. Thank you.
I would agree with that, but I want to add on to that. But also, are we systematically teaching our young men and women, our sons and daughters, about marriage and what will be expected of them? Is marriage on the table? Because I think that we're going to pay the price. No, in fact, we are paying a price. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you? There's like, I don't know, there's some sort of spiritual law in existence or something like that. When you have, you know, people abandon the tradition of their ancestors, right? Or their people, that they pay a price, man. You know, I would have found a call. Where is marriage and young people?
Yeah, and I think this is where now you know there are challenges with our cultural norms, right? Because you know I'm sure you've met Africans from the continent of Africa, right? Mm-hmm. And for them, marriage is still a very important thing, and it's actually nothing to do with even religion. It's just culturally what you do. Yeah. You know, so you know you meet any African nationality, Nigerians and so on. And within their culture, if boy meets girl and if boy and girl are serious, the next step is marriage, right?
Yeah. So they've been dating for a period of time, and then there'll be pressure from one side or the other or both sides saying, well, what are you not doing? What's going on? And that means when you're not getting married or when you're organizing a marriage or what, you know, like, let's get down to business now. And I think that our parents' generation was like that. For those of us who are descendants of the Windrush people, you know, like that, we don't come from some non-marrying culture. So I don't like people try to sell Caribbean people down the river like, you know, it's because of slave. No, our parents were married. Our grandparents were married. Do you know what I'm trying to say to you? Even in slavery, our flipping great-great-grandparents were married. So this thing of this abandoning marriage is new for us.
It's true because even in my family, my grandparents are married until death.
Right. That's normal thing in the Caribbean culture. Normal thing.
Yes. But talking about staying power though, because as you said, are we, and as the caller said, firstly, are we creating forums for Black boys and girls to meet each other, right? That's a very important question the caller is presenting.
Very, I like that question. That's deep thinking. Yeah. I like that.
But once you introduce them to each other, I guess where I'm going is how do we make sure they stay with each other? Because if I use my grandparents as an example, right, I wouldn't necessarily say from my observation that their marriage was easy or, you know, there were some challenges. But I tell you what, though, they stayed until they're still together. Through thick and thin, through, because my grandmother was a proper matriarch, so, kudos to my granddad for just, he managed. But the fact is that he stayed.
Yeah.
And until death separated them, he stayed. Hello, caller. Who says marrying a black woman is an easy thing, right? And it's not, I'm not being disrespectful. Marrying a black woman is actually climbing a mountain. It is very hard to get there. But when you eventually get to the actual very top, that's the closest place you are to God, right?
Come on now, come on.
You can look at that. But the issue basically is that marriage should be about a challenge for a man to understand what it is to be a man and to be able to stand up to being a man. And that is about responsibility, that is about the fortitude of actually commitment. But one of the things we are not looking at is what is commitment, right, in a relationship. It's not an easy ride. It's a lifetime commitment. It's a lifetime engagement.
Real talk.
You want that person to go through making decisions, buying your energy. Maybe times that you actually the woman that actually gives you that energy, and when you find out the man to do energy. You know what? Well, wow. Well, here's some really interesting,
powerful.
Point there, right?
No, definitely. The man said commitment, and that's the word. That is the word in it. When it really comes down to its commitment, I think that for us, in terms of us as black men, and in terms of how we're training our boys into their manhood and the rites of passage that we need, it's got to be dealing with things like, we got to really be teaching our sons things like accountability and integrity. You know what I mean? Being like having self-determination because life is tough. Being a visionary, like having goals and having a vision, right? Dealing with our anger, but in a positive way, how to channel our anger, like a positive anger expression. And we must have respect for womanhood. I'm not talking about simping, when they're not being able to hold women accountable, but I'm saying to know when you got an empress or you got a queen or you're dealing with women, that you know how to be a gentleman, not to be fearful of being a gentleman. You know what I'm trying to say to you? Know how to treat a lady because you are a gentleman. We need to, imbue those qualities, right, in our sons. And they will know how to identify a queen and how to move with a queen. And then when a man shows certain leadership and operates a certain way, a woman will acquiesce, a woman will follow. You know what I mean? You have to worry about the ratchet crew and that. They, Duppy know to frighten. They will be over there with the ratchet men, but we have to really, work on that. And like the brother said, where are the forums for us where our young people can meet? And with that level, with that kind of level of marriage, not just like a little one night for here, little party thing, but like, people who's looking for something serious, who's looking for lifetime commitment. You know what I mean?
And one quick thing here, look, I will have to do part 3 again, but just on, because we're running out of time, but on what the influence of TV. So now we see a lot of programs like Love Island, which may be giving young people a very distorted view of relationships. Because if you notice, first of all, the physicality of the men on the show, these are very well toned men, irrespective of they're white or black, they're very well toned. And then the women are likewise very, petite.
It's kind of sanitized, like it's not everyday people. It's not everyday people.
Not everyday people at all. And even the psychology of the show, where you can hook up with one person and then if another person could steal away from that person. It's a very distorted.
It's like, you know what it is? For the views, they need to create conflicts. They need to create, a plot. And so these shows are made to manipulate, to put people in close proximity, play with their feelings, and it kicks off. Just say, let's see how it plays out, because jealousy, envy, backbiting, it's good TV in it. It's not exactly healthy. You know what I'm saying? It's not psychological, but it does make good telly. It makes for good telly, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But is it distorting young people's views of relationships?
I think with the music, and the popular culture and love and hip hop, like this other program we mentioned, these different programs turning it into a meat market. Yeah, it's not ideal, is it? It's not really ideal. It's messing with young people's minds, I think.
And it's also messing with what they should define as attractive.
Well, but to a certain degree, I think that media does influence attraction to a certain degree. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why you get some of these women who end up having eating disorders and all kind of problems and stuff like that, because they feel that I don't match up to the magazine image, so therefore I'm inferior and stuff like that.
Or what you find is that everything is fake. The eyelashes are fake. The hair is fake. Everything that becomes
because woman going Turkey for BB. Was it BBL? Woman going Turkey, they get a good price in the BBL or something like that. Like, so yeah, there's all this surgery and cosmetics and stuff like that. But more than that, what's the person behind all of that?
Yeah. Well, I think next time I want to explore some of the things that caller mentioned about, how do we prepare our men for long-term relationships? The caller made some really, really good points that I think next time when we have you on, we want to go into that.
I would like to talk about rites of passage next time, like where we can, because rites of passage is a process about taking boys from boyhood and giving them like manhood training. Those lessons, them kind of things that we used to have. But the older men would take the boys outside the village and put them through certain processes, and then they would come back and be celebrated like, oh, you passed the test, now you're a man. We don't really have those systems in place no more. So, you know what I mean? The internet, the gang, the friends, Facebook and TikTok, they're getting the information from various places, but they're not really being schooled by the adults. Do you know what I mean? So it's less than ideal. So yeah, I'd love to talk about that another time.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Hugh, for coming on the show. Always interesting to
Been a pleasure.
catch up with
Been a pleasure, my bro. Been a pleasure.
And look forward to doing it again. We'll have to do part 3. It's a running series.
No worries, man. Take it easy.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, man. Cheers. Bye.
Okay, so that was Hugh.
And remember to like, share, subscribe. Until next time, peace.